Hello, everyone. It's been a while. Welcome to episode 3 of the Late Dive podcast. Good to have you guys back. We've been away for a long time. I am here with my fellow co-host, producer, all-around good guy, Nerdy, who none of this would be possible without. Nerdy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for the introduction, but glad to be here. Glad to have you back as well. But yeah, excited to do another podcast.
Yeah, it's been way too long,
Yep.
and partially my fault, but we're back to talk some F1. So how
Yes.
excited are you?
Super excited. After watching that first race this season, it's nice for the action to be back, and I just can't wait for so many more races to come. How about
Yeah, I
yourself?
agree. So yeah, all good here. My apologies if I sound a little bit under the weather, but you know what? We're gonna pull through it just like Piastri. We're gonna slam that thing in reverse and get back on track.
Yeah, let's go. Adiamo.
All right, let's chat some F1. First of all, new season.
Yep.
What were your expectations going into this 2025 season? The season just before all the changes are gonna come.
I didn't have a lot of expectations. I thought a lot of the teams would do the bare minimum just because, it's kind of a bumper year. The big regulations have big opportunities to be made. So I thought there would be a lot of upgrades. But after seeing tested and seeing, like, for Williams, for example, like the amount of gains they made, like, oh my God, bro. Yeah, so far this season has already surpassed my expectations. What about yourself?
Yeah, how fun is it to see Williams back up and running a little bit better, right?
Absolutely beautiful.
It's been a while. It's
Yeah.
been a while, and especially I think a guy that we all love, Sainz in that car, and Albon, just one of the best guys on the grid.
Yep.
Yeah, no expectations. Was to see Max near the top again, regardless of how good his car is. Just because he's Max, he's that good. Obviously, the McLarens picked up right where they left off. We kind of had an idea that was going to happen. I was a little bit shocked with the bottom teams, and you talked about Williams, but a lot of these bottom teams showed next to no progress, like Haas, for example. So that's what surprised me a little bit more.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you there, yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you? Let's talk about Australia. Since let's jump right into it. Like, what would you give that race out of 10 to begin with?
The race as a whole, I would give it maybe a 6 or 7. But if I'm going to rate the drama, solid 10. Solid 10.
Yeah, I agree. I think the race was a 6 or 7. I think with the drama, the safety cars, the rain, it ended up being a 9. But I think if it would have been in the dry, it would have maybe been a 3.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we got lucky. I think it's not often we get to see Australia with some rain, but I guess it's a good thing that we have it at the beginning of the calendar now, like right off the bat.
100%. I like that it's back at the top of the calendar. For me, growing up, that was always a season opener. So that just seems like right for me. You know what I mean?
I remember the same thing. I remember I might butcher that. I think it was Hakkinen like starting third and just ramming the back of the first place car and flying in the air. That's my first memory of Australia, like maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was yeah. So yeah, good turnout too, like 480,000, something crazy, even though it was raining during the race. Yeah, they didn't get to see their boy win or anything, but let's talk about Lando. He looked solid.
Yep.
He looked in control. Of course, little mistakes here and there, but I mean, like it was that tarmac is slippery on a dry day.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
I can only imagine in the rain. Walk us through it, Nerdy. What did you think of Lando and his performance? Almost flawless.
Yeah, definitely it was a very commanding lead that he had. Great performance. I think had it been dry conditions, it would have been a walk in the park for him. Even in the wet, he handled himself well. Yes, he had to go off track, as I think we all saw. But given the conditions and the amount of people that went off track and them trying to do that on dries, it was bound to happen. So honestly, if I were to give him a rating out of 10, I would probably have to say a solid 9.
Yeah, I totally agree. Those mistakes are going to be made by everyone on the grid, including the rookies, but also including legends like Fernando Alonso, veteran drivers like Carlos
Hmm.
Sainz. It seemed to me like everyone made at least the mistake, even if it was just one small slip up or completely binning it in the wall.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great for Lando. I 100% agree with you. I think McLaren on that track in the dry looked like they would have won by 30 seconds,
Yeah.
like maybe like the new Red Bull, like from
Hmm.
last year, you know.
Hmm.
And as a Red Bull fan, as a Max fan, I can't complain because I've had that success, and
Yeah.
before then was Mercedes. But it's kind of good to see Max. It's almost better to see Max in this position where he has the second, third, fourth best car because now he's still so good that you're actually going to see a battle for the lead.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely give it that. Seeing him come from behind in a car that is not the best is going to be a little bit more exciting. I just hope we don't get those moments of desperation out of him where the driving becomes a little less clean. Because a clean drive at backs making great passes is beautiful, and that's what I want to see more of.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to see him lose his aggressiveness though, like in the sense of as long as he's squeezing people out the track and not like ramming into them, as long as it stays, a good racing battle. We don't want to just see a DRS passes, and we want to see good racing. We want to
Yep,
see clean racing, but we also want to see aggressive racing. So
exactly,
yeah, I agree. But keep it on the limit, right?
exactly. Yeah, keep it in the white lines.
Yeah, yeah, and I absolutely agree. Now, hometown heartbreak, nerdy. Piastri, the home favorite. He had the car. He had the pace. I thought he was
Mhm.
going to pass Norris, but obviously he was pushing a little too hard. Maybe that's why. At one point, he was lapping half a second quicker. And then all hell broke loose. He went sideways into the grass, got
Mhm.
stuck, and to the displeasure of the crowd. So run me through Piastri and how good his race was before, and then what happened.
You know, Piastri, I thought this year would be his year. Last year he came pretty close. He had a couple wins. He had some great moments, and I thought, they might give Norris the championship last year, try to help him because he was a little bit higher on the points. But I thought this year, starting off fresh with the momentum, I thought Piastri would be the one to beat. And I mean, he's up there. He's definitely got pace. He's definitely got skill. I think thus far Norris does have a little bit of an edge on him. But I like to see how this season progresses and see if he can get a little bit stronger because he's quick. And that middle stint that he did when he was catching Norris before he went off and lost, 2.5 seconds, he definitely looked like he had the pace to fight for the win. And I was really, really anxious and really excited to see the battle between those two teammates. How about yourself?
Yeah, and Zach Brown has promised us that he is going to let them race. I don't know how long that's going to last, nerdy, and I don't know if he's being honest with us. I, he's been talking a lot of crap about Red Bull and how they went about, their teammate battles or helping each other out or helping Max out. But when push comes to shove and you're halfway through the season and your two drivers are at the front, we're really about to find out what McLaren's going to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, kind of a different ball game now. They're going to have to play with these two because I do think Piastri is going to give Lando a run for his money every single race, and I
Oh, yeah.
do think track specific. I do think Piastri will be quicker in some tracks.
Yeah, I would suspect so as well. I really want to see how that dynamic between them is going to progress through the season because I think they're going to be at each other, which is going to be a bad thing because they're also going to be stealing points off of one another, which can hurt them in the championship battle for drivers.
Yeah, 100%, and that's when a guy like Max or Charles or whoever can sweep in, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think makes that McLaren so quick? Like, what do you? I know last year it just I think it's the base of the car, the overall balance, and then every upgrade they threw on it was just working to perfection. So, what do you think makes it even quicker this year? What do you think? Why is that car so well balanced? Why are the tires heating up the same as others, but they're not degrading? Like, what do you think's happening there?
Two words: flexi wings.
Yeah.
We know they had mini DRS last year, and I've seen some onboard footage that has been analyzed since the Australian Grand Prix, and their rear wing has a nice little bit of deflection on a straight, which would lower the downforce, make them rock in a straight line. But then when you get to the corners, they're going to have that what do you call it? The supposed to be back up. They're going to have the downforce and be able to maintain the tires, because higher downforce means less scrubbing of the tires, right? And then we know they have a flexi front wing that's going to be outlawed, I think, what is it, for Japan? And yeah, it works wonderful. And I think having the flexi wings on the front and back gives them a huge boost on the straights. And because they can run a slightly higher downforce, it also keeps the tires alive.
Yeah, and on that rear wing, did you see that? Like, it's not. It's also the little gaps on the corner, right? Did you see those?
Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. So if you're the FIA, where do you draw the line? Because like that rear wing is meant to open in a DRS zone when you're behind the car. Now, if you have any type of gap, that's while your DRS is closed, of course that's going to help. So, like, where do you draw the line? You're allowed to open up the wing for DRS. So, how is this allowable? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing or a good thing, because the other cars are gonna evolve and they're gonna get it too. But like, where do you think we should draw the line? Don't you think that would have been a slam dunk? Like, not sure this upgrade is allowed.
Well, the thing with the technical regulations is sometimes the wording isn't quite clear, and there's a little wiggle room for interpretation, and that's exactly what McLaren found, was that wiggle room. The FIA has tightened up the regulations, and mid-season there is going to be a change, which I think, like I said, is supposed to be introduced in Japan, where the DRS is only going to be allowed two states, closed and open, no in between. So once those regulations drop, that little trick they have will go out the window.
I suspect they will still be the quickest car, but that definitely might just help the other cars a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, they might lose a little bit straight line speed, I should say. But outside of that, I mean, they've got a great aero package as a whole. They've got the Mercedes engine, which we have seen proven through the last couple of years has been the most reliable engine in the grid. So I don't think that this is the only reason they're winning. I just think it's a little bit of a perk.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's let's hope. I mean, it's only been one race. We don't want to lose hope. We always want exciting battles. It's great that it's McLaren that's come back to top now, but we kind of had a feeling with the practices and the testing that there would be four cars at least fighting for wins. So hopefully that's still the case. It might very well be, depending on the track. So let's move on here, Nerdy. To our second place finisher, we talked about him a little bit, Max, in that Red Bull car. The car that seems like it's kind of nowhere compared to what it was before. It seems like every teammate of Max can't drive it. It seems loose. It seems looser in the rain. It seems wiggly all the time. It seems like it's almost too light of a car, but too heavy on the rear. And it seems like only Max Verstappen can drive that car because he's that good. Or, like, I don't know. Your thoughts on Red Bull, what direction they're going, but also how well Max did to stay close to Norris and Piastri with a car that looked like he was about to lose at every turn.
Max definitely has a phenomenal feel for the rear. I think we saw him off the launch being able to judge the traction on those rear tires and be able to pull that pass on Piastri, basically going to turn one. So yeah, Max did a phenomenal job to keep that car on track, period. But then also to have the kind of pace he had at the beginning of his first stint was phenomenal. I know he did taper off, but I mean, the car does have its limitations. He can only do so much with it. But yeah, outside of that, I think he did a phenomenal job during the race to even finish where he did. In terms of the car itself, I think Red Bull, for a lot of seasons now, have been the one team that's kind of been developing a car around a driver. I know that's not typically the status quo, but because Max Verstappen has been able to live on the edge with the car and still be able to perform at such a high level, the engineers just kept developing in that one direction. And normally I would say, no, that's BS. It's not built for the driver. But you can't have this many good drivers going into a car and not being able to work with it. Albon should have been our first clue because he's phenomenal. To see what he's doing in the Williams now is proof.
Agree.
And then we had Checo. Checo, he was an outlier for me. I never really had much faith in Checo, so he was kind of like, okay, maybe it's the car.
He
maybe
did
it's
win
him.
some races, though. He did win quite a few races, like Ricardo did.
Yes. So yeah, you got to give him that. He is a good driver, but that should have been the second sign. But I will admit, I 100% overlooked it. But then Lawson, 3 for 3. He was nowhere. And how is it that Red Bull is promoting all these drivers and they're all dog shit? Unlikely. Unlikely.
You know what? I don't want to say I told you so back in our last episode, Nerdy, but we need the legend Yuki to come on board. That's what we need.
I had no faith in Yuki until he outqualified Liam. And I'm sorry. Yuki's the man for the job. Yuki for president. I have all support behind Yuki. He's the man for the job, 100%.
And kind of like a lot of drivers, Yuki has just kept improving every year, every 6 months, kind of like Piastri. Just like every rep seems better than the previous. It just keeps getting better and better and better, and it's actually really fun to watch because I would love to see that man on team radio as he's leading a Grand Prix. Like, I'll take that all day long.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just unfortunate with him being a Honda-backed driver that he's probably never going to get that seat. His best bet is going to hope that something opens up like Aston, or maybe Honda picks up another team. But I unfortunately think because of his allegiance, or at least his sponsorship, he's probably not going to be in the grid for that much longer.
Yeah, I really, really hope you're wrong, but it is a possibility for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and that car, that Rebel car, it's almost like you have to save it every corner, especially in the rain. So hopefully upgrades are coming and dry tracks. We'll see how close they are in China, but now let's talk about a couple of youngsters, one a little younger than the other. Antonelli and Albon finished 4th and 5th. Unbelievable drive. Sometimes we talk about pace. Yes. Feel. Yes. Antonelli is 18 years old. We get all that. And sometimes it's just bringing it home and not crashing in a race that is just so slippery, so wet. But how impressed were you with Antonelli? And then with not as much of a rookie anymore, but with Albon?
Albon, always going to have high praise for him. Phenomenal driver. I was a little bit worried what would happen to see him paired with Sainz, but he's still doing well. He didn't crash out in the race, so that's a huge bonus for him, and he finished high up in the points, which is great for Williams, as well as for keeping his career alive. In terms of Antonelli, though, he started, P16? Finished P4? And at some points in the race, when he was in traffic, had better pace than George? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, impressive. Yes. Super impressive.
Yeah.
So where do you see the future with this guy? Like not even future, like near future, like this season. Like where do you think his ceiling is for this year?
If Mercedes can get their car in the window in one race where the track is cold, where their car just seems to love that chilled air, Antonelli wins a race. 100%. If Antonelli goes this season without a podium, I'm going to be shocked, absolutely shocked. But he's definitely a champion material. Like this kid, I'm super impressed. Like I don't know what to say, man. He's up there.
Yeah, if Mercedes has the car, I agree. I'd be shocked if he doesn't get at least 1 or 2 podiums. I think that'll all depend on if McLaren is 1-2 every single race. Then that only leaves one spot.
Yeah.
But man, that kid is second youngest ever to get a top 4, I think, just after Max or something like that. It's incredible. It's a great result for Albon, and I think, I call me crazy. I think if Sainz doesn't crash out, I think you're probably looking at a 5th and 7th place for Williams.
Yep, the car is phenomenal. So
it looks good. Now I'm gonna say 2 words to you, and I want you to take it away. Rookies fall.
Ooh.
That was the story of Australia. Rookies fall.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Behrman. Last year when he subbed in for Ferrari, he got a P7 first day in the car, no practice. Like, the kid's got skills. So when he came to Haas, I had a lot of expectations. I had a lot of hopes, a lot of dreams. This first race was not his best showing. Um, I really hope that this is a blip on the radar for him, and that he can turn his performance around. Because if he can pull off anything like he did in the Ferrari, in the Haas, and obviously I don't expect him to get P7s all the time, but just battle in the midfield, I think he has the potential to be a fantastic driver. Isaac.
Yeah, I agree. I was just 1 second there. I agree with Behrman's assessment. But do you remember our good friend Mitchie? Mitch on the last one of our podcasts said that Haas is the goddamn tractor. So hopefully he doesn't have to drive a tractor for too long, because
Yeah.
I do think he's got tons of potential too, and I do think it won't take long before he's surpassed Ocon.
Oh, definitely. I definitely have more faith in Behrman than Ocon. Ocon's got obviously a little bit more experience, so for him to be in the wet conditions is going to have advantage. But no, I definitely think by year end, Ocon's going to have been beaten by Behrman.
Yeah, I agree. You were mentioning Ajar. You're going to say Ajar.
Yeah, that's heartbreaking. First race of the season, does he make it to the grid? Well, make it past the formation lap. Yeah, I feel for him. And to see Anthony Hamilton consoling him after the race when Helmut Marko's making sly comments about him, it's a tough business, tough industry, and I think unfortunately the environment that he's in, where it's high pressure, is going to make him make more mistakes. So hopefully he can just keep his head up, do the work,
Yeah.
and pull off some great performances.
Yeah, I agree. Great show of class from Mr. Hamilton. And Helmut Marko. There was a place for people like this, like in the past. We're in new generations there. Part of me thinks, like, of course he's just old school and grew up in a certain era in a different country and all that. But it's too much. It's too old school. At some point, you're just an asshole.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a huge Red Bull guy, but at some point, I don't care who you work for, you're just an asshole. If you just keep repeatedly making these comments, and you're making a comment about a guy that you never know, he could be sitting in one of your cars in a couple of years.
Yeah, exactly.
It's I felt bad for Ajar too, but we can sugarcoat it all we want though, Nerdy. It was 100% his fault.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's why he was so upset. And he didn't blame anybody though. Obviously he can't, but so it's heartbreaking, and hopefully these rookies get to show a little bit more of their potential in the dry, or on the next race. Because if this happens 2-3 races in a row, we were all excited about seeing so many rookies on the grid. We won't be excited very long if this keeps happening.
Exactly. Yeah. We want to see races with a little lower nutrition than has happened.
And let's not forget, it happened to Alonso and Sainz, and these boys are not rookies.
Nope. Now, Sainz, his was a little bit confusing. I watched the replay over and over and over again, and I still can't tell if he just blipped the throttle too much or if he was off throttle and the axle locked up. The team hasn't released any information yet about what has happened, and I've heard some analysis from the commentators, and they're just as confused as I am. So I'd really like to know what happened with him, because this is definitely not in his usual character. And then Alonso, the forever rookie, that was just a cliche rookie mistake he made.
Yeah, he said that I heard him say that he did absolutely nothing different that lap. He took it the exact same way, but he said there had been gravel that had been thrown onto the track. Now, I mean, I guess if you see the gravel, you have to be a little bit more careful. I don't want to doubt Alonso. He's a legend, but it's not easy. And also, like you mentioned, you don't know what happened with Sainz. To be fair to Jack Doohan too, I keep watching that replay, and I still have no idea how that car snapped sideways. Like, of course, it has to be just a little bit too much throttle. But if I look at the telemetry, if I look at the car, it just did not look like it should have gone sideways.
Yeah,
to me.
Agree.
So some guys get unlucky, I guess, but it is what it is. Ferrari, your boy Hamilton.
Hmm.
Are they back to their old ways? Well, not old ways. It's been a problem. The engineers have been a problem for a while. The strategists. Um, the car looks good visually, but on track, I mean, it was a wet race, so I want to reassess after a dry race. But where do you stand with Ferrari, and where do they go from here? Because they're not going to be happy very long.
It was a weird race. I'm not entirely sure exactly what their strategists were smoking to try to keep Hamilton out on the, what was it, hards at the time on a wet track. I mean, if they were softs and they were a little bit warmer in temperature because it's easier to work the grip, sure, maybe.
Yep.
But really, when I saw him P1, P2, I'm like, okay, this is nice to see, but this is a dumb choice. And I also loved the lack of confidence that the engineer had over the radio when Hamilton said or inquired about the rain. And he's like, yeah, this is it, I think, maybe. Like,
We're just unfortunately we're getting used to it.
yeah.
Like I don't know. I don't know. To me, it's crazy. And they obviously have different codes now for power modes and stuff.
Hmm.
They were asking for him to check and test out the K1, which we all assume is an engine mode. Kept telling them to leave me to it. I'll use it when I'm ready. And he just kept insisting. I don't know. I guess Leclerc's used to it by now and just knows how to talk to these guys and everything. But I can't see Hamilton not missing Bono after 2 races of this.
He already misses him, 100%.
I agree. It's nuts to me. Like we're supposed to be the pinnacle of racing, and I'm sure these guys are phenomenal in the background
Hmm.
at their jobs. But when it comes to communicating it, I don't know, nerdy. Like I don't know where they go from here.
Is it a cultural thing? Because I mean, I know they're based in Italy, and a lot of their team members are Italian. Is it just like Germans versus Americans? You know what I mean? Or Japanese versus Americans? Just like that culture difference. They're a little bit more pushy for certain things. I don't know what it is, but the team radio definitely has to change. I know Fred Vasseur has already made comments that they're going to change how they communicate with the drivers going forward. But that was
Yeah.
just insane. Just the braidment. And I just don't understand why they think that's conductive to helping the driver while he's trying to concentrate on a wet track. Just K1, try K1, just try it, please, K1, K1.
I don't know if it's a communication issue, a cultural thing, but they just don't seem, the two engineers just don't seem like there's any confidence coming out of them.
No.
Like when they make a decision, it's zero. And to me, Fred Vassaro sounds like a no bullshit kind of guy. So I mean, how long is he going to take that, or does he have the power to change that? So I don't know. I don't know that. I know we're talking a lot about what's not the car, but that car is not top of the food chain either.
No.
So it's unfortunate. We want to see Williams, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull. We want to see them all at the top, the big names and the ones that have a history in F1. But I don't see that coming anytime soon, to be honest with you.
No, not at this current rate. The Ferrari last year was a step up. The Ferrari this year seems to be a step down. So hopefully they can turn around. Maybe they've already shifted up into 26 because they're taking advantage of the regs. It's hard to say. These teams aren't always fully honest with how they're treating their development. So we'll also be able to see throughout the season with how many upgrades they bring to the vehicle to know just how serious they are.
Well, the scary part was we all thought Ferrari was working on this car, and they were one of the only teams that were working on this car instead of next year. So that's the scary part.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah. So speaking, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Speaking of just finishing the race, Canadian boy Lance Stroll and Hulkenberg 6th and 7th. Great points for their teams.
Yep.
Because I have no idea where Stake is going to be. And Aston Martin is just going to roll with whatever Alonso can pull out of the car and whatever Stroll can do in the rain, because we can talk shit about Stroll all day long. He is pretty good in the rain.
Yep.
And they finished the race, and they got amazing points for their team. So was that a surprise for you, or it's just kind of like the way that the race unraveled?
It was a surprise for me, especially to see that Sauber is higher than Ferrari in the standings. just mind blown. But to see Alonso crash out and Stroll finish, that was I was perplexed. It's something you're
Yeah.
probably not going to see too much of, but it's a welcome surprise. I mean, to have a Canadian on the grid who doesn't make Canada look like a bunch of hippies is probably a good thing. Um, but yeah, it was the whole race was unpredictable. There was no way anyone had in their cards what happened on track, other than the McLaren's finishing where they finished. Unfortunately, Piastri got really unlucky there, having to reverse out of the grass. But had that not happened, it would have been a 1-2, easy.
Yeah, that was actually a fun moment. That crowd reaction when he got back
Mm-hmm.
on track was unreal.
Yeah, they were losing their minds. It was fantastic to watch.
And all right, so next up, Nerdy, we got China.
Hmm.
And I don't believe we have a break. It's this weekend, right?
That is correct.
Yeah, so hopefully it's dry. Well, just because I personally I want to see the difference
Hmm.
in the cars and the rookies and all that. So what type of track is China, and which car do you think it favors?
China's a mid downforce track, especially with the long straightaway on the back and the front. Sectors 1 and 3, it's going to be advantageous to have as slippery a car as possible. And I think that's definitely an area that Ferrari and McLaren excel. Obviously, McLaren more so than Ferrari. The Red Bulls usually have better peak downforce performance, so tracks with either low or max downforces where they really shine, especially in the low speed corners. So I'm not suspecting that Red Bull's going to have a fantastic show in there. I think they're probably going to be third best on the grid. I do believe the McLaren is going to once again walk the park here. Second, I think Mercedes might be okay here. I think it's going to be McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari. Just based off what I've seen thus far, and based off the history of how these cars typically do these kind of tracks, I could obviously be 100% wrong here. I would love to see Ferrari at least the P2 here, but I'm not gonna fluff my answer here.
You might be right because that Mercedes, looking back all the way at the end of last year, they're getting better. They're getting better. I think. I don't know. I think your boy Lewis left just a little bit too quick, and now he wishes he was back. But we're gonna find out real quick. Do you think most of the season will be the two McLarens against Max?
Yes. Wait, I don't. Oh, it's hard because if Red Bull can't give Max some decent wins, they're going to have to abandon the car and switch to 26 as quick as possible. Because we have to remember that Verstappen has a performance clause in his contract, and if his car isn't, up to a certain spec, he can walk away from the team. And the last thing they want to do is lose him, especially when Aston has made it very public that they will take Max at the earliest opportunity they can. So it really depends on the next couple races. If the car picks up performance and they're able to start fighting for genuine victories, then yes, I think it's going to be McLaren versus Max. If they can't, then I think it's going to be McLaren versus Kimi.
You think Kimi? Eh? George had a good showing too, but you think Kimi over George?
I think once Kimi has a little bit more experience on his belt, I think he's going to surpass George. He already was on pace with George in the wet, and I would argue that those are tricky conditions to drive in. And I think at one point Kimi was lapping a half a second faster than George. So if he can pull that off, and he was in traffic when he was doing that, then there's absolutely no reason to think that in the dry with more experience he's not going to be faster.
Okay, you heard it here first. Nerdy prediction time for China. Give us your podium.
Ooh. Okay. I'm going to stick with my Mercedes guns and them being the second fastest car. So I'm going to say Piastri, Norris, Russell.
Okay.
What about yourself?
I'm going to go Lando,
Hmm.
Piastri, and I want to say Max again, but I agree with you. I just don't think it's going to be his track. Maybe a big bounce back. I'm going to go Leclerc third.
Ooh.
Yeah, so yeah, anybody that made predictions last weekend were dead wrong anyways. So we'll see how ours stack up.
Yeah.
So just before we go, Nerdy, we run a little F1 Racing Simulation League, LDR, Late Dive Racing. This is where the Late Dive podcast originated from. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about what we do and where can people join and what time?
All right, so if you want to race with us at LDR Racing, we have 2 tiers right now because we're in a mini season. We do a short season between the game releases. We have a full season when the game launches, full 23 or 24 races all across the calendar. And then we have a short season just to hold us over to the new game. Right now we've got 2 tiers. Tier 2, which is our slower guys, and then we got our tier 1 guys who are the fastest of the fast. The tier 2 guys race on Thursday nights at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and our tier 1 guys race 9:30 p.m. on Eastern Standard Time on Fridays. So if you think you got pace, you love to drive F1, and you just love F1 as a whole, you want to join the league, I'll make sure to put it in the comments below, the link to our Discord, and I'll also put a link on screen. So if you want to join, that's where places to be.
Awesome. Thank you, Nerdy. This was fun. On to China. Please join, watch us, and join the league, join the racing if you're into that kind of thing. Can't wait for the next race. Glad to be back on the Late Dive podcast. This has been episode 3, and we'll see you on episode 4 after China. Thanks, Nerdy.
No problem. Thank you for having me. See you guys next week. Later.